Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name is Joe. Today I'm going to be doing a playthrough of the game Aces of Valor. This is a solitaire game of World War I aerial combat published by Legion Wargames and designed by Erik von Rossing. So let's get underway. This is a fairly straightforward game, not overly complicated. It is a narrative style game, so if you are a fan of the narrative type games, things like Target for Today or The Hunters, the things of that nature, Steve Dixon games or Gregory A. Smith games, you will probably enjoy this type of game. Okay, so here you kind of have an overview of the game board, right? So this is the game board here. You have some tracks at the top. This is your victory point and mission point track. The mission points are basically you accrue them through a mission, which you would, that makes sense. And then at the end of the mission, you are able to convert them into either victory points or do things like repair an aircraft, replace an aircraft, or upgrade an aircraft. So there are four nations, four air forces essentially in this game. You have the British, the French, the Germans, and the Americans. So obviously three from the Entente or the Allies, and the Germans on the other side, the Central Powers side. And each of those has three tiers of aircraft. The aircraft are all identical within the tier. And we'll talk about what the counters look like and so on and so forth here in a moment. But the key thing is that the aircraft are all the same, and to some extent, the pilots are also very similar. Some have skills that make them somewhat better than other pilots. It's basically all the pilots are listed on their counters by first name. So if you know your history, you'll be able to kind of deduce who these counters are. Like the Germans have a pilot named Manfred. And you might know that the Red Baron's name was Manfred von Richthofen. So that's obviously the Red Baron. Eddie Rickenbacker is in here, as well as the British ace. He's actually Canadian, Billy Bishop, and René Fonck of the French. So they're all in the game. They're just not in the game with their last name, so you kind of have to, if you're knowledgeable enough about the First World War, you would know who they are. But it also kind of removes them a little bit from, being somebody that you expect to be great or whatever it may be. Maybe it just lowers expectations or whatever. You can kind of make them your own. So let's talk about what the counters look like. And there are actually some keys here that'll make things a little easier, and I'm going to use those to kind of show you what's what here. Okay, so here we have the aircraft key. So this will explain what the various ratings are. Okay, so this is Rene, and we just talked about him. It's French. There's also color coding for the different forces. The Germans are red. The French are blue. The British are kind of a tannish color, and the Americans are green. So the counters are all this color here. So this would be an American. This would be a German. This is also a German, and this is a French. So you have a front side and a back side. The front side is the undamaged side. Back side is the damaged side. So depending on who you're playing as, because you can play as any of the four factions, you may not necessarily see the backside here, or the way damage is applied is a little different when you're for your side than it is for the enemy side. And we'll get into that as we go through the game. So here we have the gun rating, 4/6. So basically, you roll higher than the first number, it's a hit. If you roll the second number, and you're rolling one 6-sided die, so the 6 is the highest you can get. So as I mentioned, they're all the same, and all three levels of aircraft, these two numbers are the same. Now you get different numbers when you're talking about the two-seaters, The bombers are actually the same as well, but they have 2 guns on the rear. So it's a little bit different because you can see two-seater has a forward gun, the little triangle here, as well as a defensive gun. Bombers have a defensive gun. Heavy bombers have 2 defensive guns. I believe there's only 1 heavy bomber in the game. I believe that to be the case, and that belongs to the Germans. The Gotha heavy bomber, I believe, is the only one. So you have your gun rating, as I mentioned, 4/6. That's going to be on every fighter. Then you have your type, the N17. That's the Newport 17. You have the pilot name, and then you have his pilot skills, air and ground. So air to air, air to ground, right? You have various targets that you will be taking on in missions. Some of them will be ground targets. Some of them will be air targets. Obviously, you will fight enemy fighter planes, which are air targets, and you will have to use your air-to-air on that. You have your performance rating. That is generally used for determining initiative, which comes into play when you're having combat. We'll talk about that as well. Then we have our structure rating. That's basically how tough your plane is. That's a number that the enemy will have to roll against, whether it's anti-aircraft or an enemy fighter or whatever it may be, to damage your aircraft. Basically, when you are getting attacked by, say, anti-aircraft fire from the ground, they have to roll to hit, and then you do a damage check after that. So, and again, we'll go through all of this as you may guess or hope for. Oh, here's our color key right here. Red for the Germans, tan for the British, blue for the French, green for the Americans. You have a damage side. The 5+ means that anything over a 5 is a single hit. Their ratings basically remain the same except for the performance rating. So you get a reduced gun and performance rating. Ground targets, right? So ground targets also have an undamaged and a damaged side on the back. You have MP award, how many mission points you get for destroying, or in this case, damaging it. And then if you actually destroy it, you get 3 instead of 1, not in addition to 1. You have your AA defense, your anti-air defense. So that's what they attack with. Their initiative rating, which gets compared to the aircraft's initiative rating, and basically it determines who gets to attack when. And then you have a destruction rating, how many hits it takes to destroy it. So if you get 4 hits on this entrenched infantry, you get 1 MP, and it gets flipped to its damage side. If you manage to get 8 hits on it, and you keep the 4 from the first side, if you get 4 and then 4 more, you destroy it and you get 3 MPs. That's pretty much it. The map key, you have airfields, towns, fuel depots, rail yards, headquarters, balloons, woods, trenches, and then your anti-aircraft ground fire symbols. So the map does have, it's basically a grid. There is a trench section that is basically the front lines, of course. Each side has a rear area. So those are your main areas. You'll have a friendly rear, you'll have a trench area, and you'll have the enemy rear. And that's basically how that works. So looking at the full board again, right? Here's our victory point and mission point track. Here's our turn track for the missions. Typically, you'll have 24 turns. If you carry ordnance, and this only really applies to the Allies, if you carry ordnance, you'll have 22. There are things that if you go 3 combat rounds, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but if you go 3 combat rounds, you're going to lose a fuel. So that will basically move our length down as you use extra fuel. You have less fuel to complete your mission. So in theory, each one of these is a turn. Okay, so you have 24 turns to complete your mission, which is played out on this map here. This is what I was talking about. You have your Entente rear and your German rear, and then you have the front. And there's a friendly side of the front and an enemy side of the front as well. And you have your guns and balloons. Here we have a rail yard, an airfield, depot, cities, Saint-Omer, St. Paul, so on, Amiens, etc., all over the map. On this side, you have your operations chart, which is where combat takes place. So you have a lost box, a recovery box, a ready box, and a current flight at the top. This is for your planes. You'll have 8 planes in your squadron. Then we have the initiative track for when you do combat. So it goes from 1 to 20, the higher the better. And then based on the difference between the attacker and the defender, that's going to actually impact what your dice roll will need to be to damage the enemy. So gaining initiative and having a high initiative is definitely important and something you definitely want to do. There are boxes down here for once a plane takes its action, once it completes its combat round, essentially, it goes to the action taken box. Planes can break off, and then they don't take part in the combat any longer, and then you have a destroyed box for anybody who gets shot down. There are a lot of charts. I won't show the charts until they come up, but there are a lot of various charts, things you roll on. As I mentioned, this is a narrative style game. There's a lot of dice rolling and a lot of things that come up via dice rolling. A lot of people will wonder how much decision space you have. There is some. We'll talk about that. You plan your path, and there are things that you decide. You decide which planes to take, so on and so forth. You can upgrade pilots. Obviously, at the end of a mission, you decide how to spend your points. In some ways, it reminds me a little bit of like the Leader series from Dan Versing Games in terms of, you can improve your forces. You get to deploy your forces in a way that you wish, essentially. And then, lightly. It's not anything, there's no stress and all that other stuff that the Leader games have. So it's kind of a little bit of that and a lot more of the narrative style kind of react to events as they happen and so on and so forth. So this is the back of the rule book, which has the top aces for each country. You have the Red Baron, Manfred von Richthofen, Eddie Rickenbacker, the number of kills. He had 80. He was the top ace of the First World War. Second was the French pilot René Fonck, 75. Billy Bishop, the Canadian flying for the British, had 72 kills, and Rickenbacker had 26 kills. Of course, the Americans only participated in the war for about, 18, 19 months, something like that. So you have weather. Here's your AA chart, basically to check for any aircraft. There's events that can happen in flight. The combat sequence is here. The sequence of play is over here. The campaign setup is really simple. So you have 3 levels of campaign: short, medium, and long. And this is how many missions are in there. So you have an 8-mission short campaign, a 12-mission medium campaign, and a 16-mission long campaign. You draw your missions from the mission deck. And this is basically the layout of how the game is played. And I might just do a setup and then we'll actually do the playthrough in a second video, because I want to try and keep things reasonably short. I do know that, people obviously, they don't watch entire videos. Some do, some don't. More don't than do. So if I keep things compact, then maybe, your time is better spent viewing what you wish to view, and then you can kind of dispense with some of the stuff maybe you're not interested in. So having said that, the first thing you do when you're starting a new campaign is you determine first how long is the campaign. So let's just do short. Now I'm probably not going to play out the whole campaign as part of this video series, because it would turn out to be probably 10 videos or something. So we'll just do 8. Right? That's a short campaign, and then you also would need to determine what nation you want to play as. So you choose your campaign length. You put your markers on the map. I've already done that. Pick your nationality. So I'm going to play as the Germans. We'll play as, the quote-unquote bad guys, I guess. So I'll play as the Germans, because that will let me have a variety of possible enemies to take on in air-to-air combat. I might get the French. I might get the British. I might even get the Americans. We don't know. So then you roll against this S1 chart, which will determine what type of aircraft you get. So if I pick this up, this is the sheet we were just looking at. You have here your squadron aircraft type. So you have tier 1, 2, and 3, and you roll 1d6 to determine what tier, right? So for the Germans, these are the German aircraft, the D3, the DR1, and the D7. The British have the Sopwiths, the Pup, the Camel, and the Dolphin. The French have the Newport 17, and the Spad 7, and the Spad 13. The Americans have the 17, the Newport 28, and the Spad 13. So depending on what you roll here, then you will also roll for what airfield is your base. So I'm going to roll one die. Honestly, I would probably prefer tier 2, but if we get tier 1 or tier 3, we'll go with that. You don't get an upgrade path if you do start with tier 3. So, you know, up here, the upgrade aircraft where you can spend 3 MP, it's useless. You can't do it. So I'm going to roll one die, and I got a 5, which is tier 3. So we'll go with tier 3. So there are 16 pilots, and this is your tier 3 aircraft. So this for the Germans is the D7. So here, whoops. This is Manfred. So there he is. 4.6 for his firepower. He's got a 2. 2 is the best to start with. You can improve this in game, so it could become a 3. And then you have the 8 for the structural, the 8 for performance and 5 for structural. So we're going to end up with 8 of these guys. There's about 16 of these, I believe. And we'll pull those out in a moment. But what I want to start off, the next step is to actually choose your airfield. So we have a home airfield marker, which is this guy right here. And we're going to roll a die, and it'll tell us what airfield it is. So that is another 5, and that would be airfield C. So we look on our map here, airfield C is down here. So we're going to, once I start playing, I'll zoom in and we'll concentrate on this area mostly, and then occasionally this area over here. So we're in airfield C. That is what we are starting with. And it is possible that your airfield could change. There are things here for airfield changes. Once you get to 4, I'm going to put that back down there. You can, once we get through 4 missions, between mission 4 and mission 5, you would check for an airfield change. Because the aircraft did change airfields. The front line, I know, World War I was very static in comparison to the Second World War for sure. But there was some movement that went on. There were offensives, and ground was gained, not much typically, but some. So the airfields did move around. And airfields back then were very simple. You just needed kind of a cleared field where you could land your planes and take off from, and build some huts around for maintenance and housing and so on and so forth. There weren't the big, air bases that you got in, wars after the First World War. So after you do that, the fourth and final step of campaign setup is to draw your 8 pilots. So I'm going to take my cup. I'm going to dump all of my Germans here in the cup. I'll shake it up. We'll draw out 8. I'm going to pull a whole bunch out all at once. And I got way more than 8. Let me throw some of these back. All right. So we've got Lothar, who's a 0-0. So he's basically kind of a rookie. Then we have Erik, 1-2. So that's a good one. We have Rudolph, who's a 0-0. We have Karl, who's also a 0-0. We have Fritz, who's a 0-1. So I need 3 more. Hoping to get the Red Baron out of here. And we got 3 left. We get Otto, who's a 0-0. We get Joseph, 1-1. And Bruno, who's a 0-0. So we did not draw the Red Baron, which is kind of disappointing for me personally. So we will put these guys in the ready box, and I'm just going to slide them all over here. And so this is our ready box, because they stay in the ready box unless they're, the plane is damaged, basically. So they go to the ready box over here, all 8 of them. And then I get to pick out which ones I will want to use in my first mission. So we'll just do like that. And that is how you set up your campaign. So the campaign is now set up, and now you would go into your mission sequence. So you have a pre-mission phase. The first thing is move the campaign mission marker. We're already on mission 1, so we don't have to move that. So we're going to stick on 1. You draw a mission card, which would be this deck right here. And then you could have a scramble, which is basically the enemy's attacking your airfield. You got to get up there and defend it. Pretty simple. You roll for weather. You choose the ready aircraft. If you need to draw 2-seaters or bombers, depending on what the mission is, you may need to use some of these auxiliary aircraft as part of your force. Then you'll roll for ordnance. That's really more for the Allies. So as the Germans, we won't worry about that. Then you'll start moving. You roll if you have damaged aircraft. You have to roll before you start your turn. If you don't, you just move right to the moving of the flight. So we're going to start here. Let me put my marker here. So we have a current flight marker. This is where we will mark our position on the map. So we'll start at our airfield, of course, and then from there we'll move out and move to wherever our target is. And it can be anywhere from the front line into the enemy rear area, or even over our own territory if we're fighting enemy fighters who are, coming in to do something on our side of the front line. So you have no man's land here. Depending on what the mission is, well, we can draw the mission. Okay, so we get trench strafing. Okay, and there's some cool art on here, and it tells you Major James McCudden, who had 57 victories. So that's him in his plane right here. 4 fighters. Conduct an attack on D3 ground targets in enemy trench sectors F through H. Then you use table F8, and I'll show you that table in the next video. To determine the ground target types, ignore ground target result during flight event check. The MPs will equal per target damage. So you'll get damage, or MPs rather, based on how much damage you do to the enemy, which is pretty much all you can ask for. So that is our mission. We will pick that up in part 2. So this is going to be part 1 of our campaign playthrough. Basically, this is just a setup. And then we'll have a playthrough, which could be multiple parts. I don't know until I do it, whether it'll be 1 part or 2 parts. I don't think it would be more than 2. The missions, once you get them rolling, they play out pretty quickly. So yeah, so I'm going to wrap this up now, and then we'll move on to actual gameplay in the next video, and that should come out, the next day after this one. So depending on when you're looking at this, it may already be done, or it may be coming out tomorrow. Okay, so that's going to do it. As always, thank you for watching. I definitely appreciate it. Please, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to post them up. I will definitely read them. I do look forward to seeing comments and enjoy seeing and reading what you guys think about the video and the game, or whatever it may be. So please feel free. And yeah, so my name's Joe. This has been Hexed Encountered, and until next time, happy gaming.